Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented once again by our friends at Cattle, Season 5, Episode 19. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
A solo episode for the people. We got a bunch of amazing interviews coming up. This, though, will be our second solo. Like, it's your Rolodex is fantastic. You're the best partner ever. Everybody says yes. So we get some great interviews coming up starting, I guess, next episode. But it's a solo episode, which I don't mind because we got a lot of stuff to catch up. A lot of stuff happened. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. So we will marshal on with that. Lots of things happening in the food, grocery, and restaurant industries. So much happening in the news that impacts our listeners and Canadians. I mean, you got the former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien steps up and give Trump the virtual Shawinigan handshake.
That's right.
You got Joey Bag of Donuts, Liberals running for PM, and you've got people bailing. We talked about Melanie Joly, and you liked her, but she's not running. I don't know if Champagne is announced. Anyway, and you got class action suits are in session. These are all
goodness. Absolutely. Everyone's suing everybody.
And I've just returned literally fresh.
From New York City.
Somebody said, it was very funny. Somebody said maybe we should call it the U.S. of A, which I thought was quite funny.
A as in H-E-Y.
H as in E-H. As in E-H. A big retail conference. I went deep into the enemy lair, Trump Towers.
You got some prop. Oh, my God.
This is an official 45-47 MAGA hat. I feel like I'm in the Lord of the Rings here. I think it can only be destroyed if I throw it back into the building.
So I got to ask you, how much did you pay for that?
Okay, here's the funny
story. Tell me someone paid you.
You know, I'll do a lot for a fun gag for the show. $50 US.
Oh, my God. Do you think that at 45, that hat was at the same price?
I will tell you the difference. It's made in America. Unlike most of the other MAGA stuff is made in China.
Right.
So a made in America hat, sourced right from the den itself, Trump. And it's a weird thing. Like he's got a store there, like a superstore. And people are just so excited to be there. Like you're got
stuff
buying stuff and
for Trump. That's it.
They're excited. It's all, the whole store. It's just all Trump. And I went there. And I wanted to get 47 stuff because they all had the 45, like he's now the 47. So I wanted to get a 47.
Were they on sale? I hope they were on sale.
They were not on. Nothing's on sale. Nothing's on sale in that store, my friend.
Oh, my God.
And I got you a present as well. I'm going to bring you, that's it, Trump chocolates. I got you Trump chocolates. It like the gold bar of Trump chocolates. So next time we see each other, you will get your Trump chocolate.
Oh, boy.
I mean, listen, the streets are alive. We got
endorsed by Stormy Daniels. Is that how the
signed by? The streets are great in New York. The weather is fabulous for my purposes, which was no snow, and
the weather was nice.
The weather was very nice. I did a bus tour, and on that bus tour, actually, I think I mentioned it before in another podcast. My first stop was at the Amazon grocery, the Amazon Fresh store.
Oh, yeah.
Guess what I picked up?
Where was it?
In New Jersey. So about half hour from Hudson Yards. So just right hop, skip, and a jump. And it was a nice day. So we got there in half an hour or less. So that worked out well. Everybody was quite, I don't know if impressed is the right word, but, we don't have any Amazon stores. We never have really here. We got Whole Foods, of course. So everybody was keen to see it and what they're doing. And what do you think I picked up in the Amazon grocery store?
What did you pick up at the Amazon grocery store? Butter?
Duke's mayonnaise. A gallon of Duke's mayonnaise.
Nice.
It is got.
We don't have Duke's mayonnaise here.
We do not have Duke's.
So you were allowed to go through customs with this? Are we gonna get in trouble here? Will Cattle actually cease its partnership now because you're a felon? Is that what's going on here?
Well, I did check it in the luggage, and by the way, I brought you some too. There you go. Next time you see each other,
oh my goodness,
I got you some Dukes. You got Dukes too,
and I love mayonnaise.
Get your Dukes. I would just say get your Dukes up. Anyway, if anybody's listening,
French, so I eat fries with mayonnaise.
I do too. Too. Anyway, Duke's mayonnaise, I'll put a link. They don't sell it in Canada, but when you're down there, there's nothing better. There's no other better mayonnaise, period. End of story. So anyway, it was a great tour. Saw lots of stuff. That was the only grocery thing. And I had a dinner last night. I hosted dinner, Steve, Dennis and I, my Remarkable Retail podcast. We hosted dinner at the Montreal-based Milos, the Greek restaurant chain. There's 2 locations in New York. We did the one in Hudson Yards. Congratulations to the folks at Milos. It's a big place, but the quality of the food and the presentation was like you were in a small bespoke restaurant. So
nice.
Congratulations to Milos. If anybody's in New York and looking for a really nice place, and it's big, so you can generally get reservations. Which is not
we're actually heading to New York in April. So so we'll need some advice in terms of restaurants, good restaurants.
Well, that's a fantastic place. And of course there's lots and there's lots of great places to go in New York. So anyway, that's my little kind of a New York. Let's get into the news.
The news. Were you able to follow all the news that's going on in Canada while you were in New York?
It's a lot when you travel, but yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Did you know, fun factoid for you and the people, did you know that the Pattison Food Group, which is now Save On Foods,
has over 150 stores in the U.S.,
was once named, and for many, many years was known as what? Overweighty.
Overweighty.
Overweighty stores. And do you know where that name comes from? Overweighty. What does it mean?
Oh, I actually used to know the answer, but I don't know. I can't remember.
For the beginning of that store, they would sell tea, but they would sell more tea than they would advertise on the package. Overweight tea.
Right.
So you would sell you an ounce and you get an ounce and a half. Why do I bring that up? Well,
I don't know. So why do you bring that up, Michael?
It seems, according to a new BC class action suit, accuses Loblaws, Walmart, and Sobeys
in BC of all places.
Now that, I guess, is stemming from the recent CBC investigations. Now let me see if I get this straight, because I have been out of the country, so I'm trying to catch up. It looks like for a period of time at some locations that the weight of the tray was included in the weight of the product.
That's right.
And so when you bought the product and you took it out of the tray, I guess people discovered, hey, wait, this doesn't weigh the product inside the beef or the hamburger just doesn't weigh the same. And they were putting in the tray, which of course is
and consumers were overcharged. Yeah.
And so consumers were overcharged, right? And so if I got that right now, I think I saw a note from Loblaws, I think, saying, hey, we did have a problem. We fixed it. Sorry.
Well, it's because they're using some new packaging, environmentally friendly packaging. And my guess is that they didn't recalibrate scales appropriately in more than 80 stores. But in the CBC investigation, Walmart and Sobeys were also involved. So it's not just Loblaw. It's across the board. Listen, honestly, I don't know about you, but I wasn't overly surprised by what was going on, to be honest, because for years I was receiving letters and emails and pictures of people saying, hey, Sylvain, you need to look into this. Scales are off at the grocery store, whether it's scales at the seafood counter, the meat counter, vegetables, and of course, scales that you find at the cashier. There are scales everywhere. Now, I've always wondered, are these scales accurate? And we do have a scale in our own kitchen right here. And once in a while, Michael, I do test because I don't know. And it's never been below 1.5%, which is the appropriate threshold. Okay, the acceptable according to Measurement Canada, 1.5%. But
plus or minus.
But the cases that I've actually seen myself and the case that it's eluded in the class action lawsuit in BC is that it's way above 1.5%. And based on the CBC investigation, it's anywhere between 4 to 11%. Now, Canadians spend about $48 billion on meat retail a year. Imagine 11% on that. That's a lot.
So I guess Loblaw said, yes, it happened in stores, and they
apologize,
and they're apologized. But are they apologized because they didn't know this was going on, and CBC did this? And is this another? We need to do more than just give you a discount on what you buy. Like, do you see any other kind of?
I honestly, and I actually did get a note from Loblaws directly, telling me exactly what happened. But at the end of the day, and this is kind of what I'm thinking here, it's the lack of rigor that really bothers me. If you're selling weighted products, make darn sure it's weighted properly. You don't need a regulator. You don't need an excuse that packaging has changed or whatever. I mean, this time around, they're using packaging as the culprit. But what about other cases when you were replacing the equipment? Perhaps some trainee or some employees weren't properly trained. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on at the grocery store. Like, it's a beehive. Mistakes can happen.
I didn't appreciate it. I know it, but I didn't appreciate it. Kind of like I didn't think of it this way. How many scales there are actually, right? As you say,
tons. Like, a lot of things are weighted at the grocery store, and we're charged based on that weight. And so that's why I think it's really important for the industry to look into this. And my guess is that Measurement Canada will start probably visiting grocery store a little bit more often to make sure that scales are accurate. And
I've never heard of who is Measurement Canada. There's Measurement Canada?
Measurement Canada is within Industry Canada, within Minister Champagne's. The thing about Measurement Canada is that if you do feel that some scales are off at your own grocery store, you can report it to Measurement Canada.
Interesting. All right.
That's right. We have all sorts of things in government in Canada. They do everything, even fixing the environment once in a while.
All right, let's move on to our next issue. New report redefining obesity and how it's measured. Now, I think we've talked about this, the BMI, body mass index, as a measure, but it's kind of just a bit of a blunt measure. And that there's
you're familiar with the BMI, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know what your BMI is, but you can see me. So do you think I'm overweight?
I wouldn't think so.
I am overweight.
According to the BMI.
According to the BMI. And I think I'm fit. I exercise every day. I eat well, but I'm unfit according to BMI. So this particular methodology presented by a group which published in the Lancet, it suggests that perhaps we should look at factors beyond the BMI, like the waistline, fat content, lifestyle, and of course we need to consider culture, gender, and other things. So it's a much more comprehensive approach to assessing obesity. And frankly, it's about time, because I mean, there is an advantage with the BMI. BMI is pretty simple. It's your height, your gender, that's it. You're done.
Yeah.
I'm 5'11". I'm supposed to be under 25, but I'm not. I'm over 25. So there you go. I'm screwed. But there are many people who are very fit, and
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. They have big bones, and then they have some muscle mass, and it penalizes them. So when and this is important because as we talked about in past episodes, there are more people who are obese around the world than people who are suffering from hunger. But how many people are actually obese based on other metrics other than BMI? So it's a really critical question.
Interesting, because it affects public policy and how they do the food, how we direct food and food.
I'm not fat, damn it.
Well, I can attest to that. And if anybody's seen you, you are absolutely not. You or your twin brother, who's quite athletic as well, right?
Yeah, well, my twin brother is he's not an academic, so he's got a few pounds less. So he's actually under 25.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I do have like 5 pounds, but I'm 54. So come on, give me a break. That's the other thing about BMI. It doesn't take into consideration your actual age. I mean, how can you possibly apply BMI on someone who's 75 versus someone who's 25? Bizarre.
Yep. All great points. Let's get back to the United States for a little bit. A bunch of things happened in the U.S. while I was there that I thought were interesting to talk about. Jack Daniels, Brown-Forman. I'm a big fan of Jack Daniels.
You are. Well, buy some bottles because they will disappear. I'm just kidding.
Well, they're cutting their workforce and closing a barrel making plant, and I'm like, wow, that's a big deal. They're very iconic brand in the U.S. But then I started thinking about the overall trends for less alcohol consumption.
Yeah,
and then I did start to think of it. Last time we did countervailing tariffs, it went against whiskeys and Kentucky bourbons. But I don't think that's what's connecting here. They just seem to have massive amounts of inventory, and I guess
it's not selling.
It's not selling. So that feels
you're not drinking enough Jack Daniels, Michael. That's your problem. That's the problem.
Jack Daniels. We shouldn't read anything other than what we've been talking about, which is people are just consuming less.
Well, the younger generations. So the Gen Zs, the millennials. Of course, alcohol is more expensive. People are more careful with their budget. All of that, all of these factors are making people drinking less. And in Canada, of course, even in the United States, I mean, I think over 27 states have legalized cannabis now. And in Canada, of course, we all know it's legal. And so I do think that people have more options and people are interested in drinking other things than just hard liquor. So I wasn't surprised by the news. It's signs of the times. And I do expect more cuts made by other manufacturers as well.
Now I want to connect that to a poll you just did, speaking of the U.S., and I got, of course, thinking about boycotts and things. And you ran a poll that I thought the results were interesting. You could vote on your poll. And it was like, okay, if we have to do this, are you in favor of boycotting? And you said U.S. goods. I guess most people were not, but I'm not in favor of boycotting all U.S. goods either, because there's some states that are like California. They're a state where you would not want to penalize, whereas others you'd want to do it tactically, strategically, to put pressure on specific people. So I guess the all-in approach doesn't make sense to most people, because I think it was 66% of people said, no, I don't support.
Yeah, the vast majority.
Boycott, right?
I got a phone call from a reporter today asking me if it was a good idea. And frankly, I don't think it is personally. But I think it's up to governments to decide how it wants to manage trades.
You mean all, because I'm a fan of actually, picking our spots, right? Because we can't take
to be more targeted.
Yeah. We got to we got to just pick our spot and say, listen, we're going to.
How do you know? How do you know when you go to a grocery store? How do you know what's made in California versus what's made like elsewhere? You got to really look.
Yeah. Really? Well, in the fruit and vegetable aisle, you certainly can.
It gets some spots it gets easier, but in like at the center of the store, it's made in the USA. I mean, you have to look at the actual address.
Yeah. Now you did make the point, I think I saw on social media, that listen, if we decided orange juice, that we got lots of places to go find orange juice, that won't be a big deal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I mean, to me, because we're the biggest buyer of OJ and oranges for the U.S. And so I actually think that one makes sense, because we can go to Brazil, we can go to Mexico, we can go to South Africa.
And Florida, of course, is shall we call it a Trump state?
It's a red state. So, yeah, absolutely. I think orange juice is actually a good pick if we want to retaliate. Absolutely. And frankly, given what's happening right now, I do think we need to respond. If it's happening on Monday.
We need to get ready to respond. Did you see this whole the new division, which is funny that he's creating a new division. Trump's creating a new division called the External Revenue Service to collect tariffs, which
I'm surprised it wasn't created before that, because, I mean, Biden never actually ceased any sanctions against China.
Yeah, but somebody's collecting that money today. Why? You don't need a new department. Like, these tariffs are like, I thought the idea was to reduce government, but now we have the External Revenue Service. I think
it's more about making a point and bringing governance to the whole exercise. I think that was his point. So that's how I read the news.
So, now, still in the U.S., we're sticking with the U.S. Couple of interesting things. Did you see that the FTC is suing John Deere tractors?
Yeah,
because they claim monopolist behavior on repairs, forcing the use of their parts. And they say overall, you can't get your tractor fixed without using the company's network of authorized repair providers. This reminded me of the whole right to repair argument. Apple just went through this, right? The right to repair. And I thought it was interesting, because I at first I'm like, why, what could this do? But it's driving up again for our farmers in the U.S. Probably,
the best innovators in the agri-food sector are farmers, because you're out there in the middle of nowhere, something breaks, you got to fix it. Yeah. I mean, so this John Deere policy to me made no sense. I mean, if you're out there, you need help. You're going to call your neighbor. You're going to do something. You're forced to call John Deere and wait. Come on. During harvest?
Well, my interpretation was, because I read a couple of articles on it coming back from the States, was that you could, farmers are very, they're great. They're like mechanics, right? So they'll get something going, but to actually fix it permanently, it's got to be done with a part from John Deere. It's got to be done,
yeah, I know.
So they can get out of the fields, but and if there's any farmers listening, send us a note and tell us if this is an experience in Canada as well.
I mean, yeah, and farmers are price takers. Don't limit them. Just don't. And speaking of limiting farmers, you probably saw the news that the acquisition of Viterra by Bunge, Swiss Bunge, was approved by the government today, the government of Canada today. This is really bizarre, because here we have a Canadian government wanting more competition, claiming that it wants more competition, and it just approved a multi-billion-dollar deal, basically merging Viterra, which is based out of Calgary. It's a Canadian company. It's being bought by Bunge out of Switzerland, and the head office is moving from Calgary to St. Louis, Missouri.
Is it Calgary-based or Saskatchewan-based?
It's Calgary-based. They do have a lot of employees in Saskatchewan. It started in Saskatchewan. It used to be the old Saskatchewan wheat bowl.
And tell me what this company does. I know, but
it's grain handling. So if you're growing wheat, if you're growing barley, you need a customer, and that customer you will get from Bunge. You will get from Viterra. Viterra will actually come to you as a farmer and say, I have a market for your product, and I have a price for your product. But if you have like a Bunge and if you have like a Viterra, well, you'll have two buyers. But now it's down to one. And so farmers are losing an option. And I'm thinking about farmers like farther from the U.S. border, because they have to cover the cost of transportation. They're less competitive. So when you lose an option, this is something that is often underappreciated by, urbanites, people who have never been like in Saskatchewan. This is really a big deal. And so that's why, like in today's Globe and Mail, you saw a lot of farmers saying this is not right. And frankly, am I concerned about the prairie's competitiveness with this acquisition? Not really. I think it's actually going to be a good thing.
Oh, okay.
The problem that I have is the government that approved something that went against its principle of increasing competition. And the memo of conditions, order of council, a 3-page memo saying, Bunge, you need to keep the number of employees in Canada. You need to make sure that that all terminals remain operational for 10 years. I mean, there's a bunch. Michael, I've never seen a huge list of conditions. Do you think they're going to follow that? No.
Yeah,
no. Look at Nutrien. So when Nutrien was created with the acquisition of Potash Corp, all executives weren't living in Saskatoon. And the government said, okay, we'll approve the merger, as long as you keep the head office in Saskatoon. The head office is in Saskatoon, but most executives are in Chicago. So that's why farmers are upset, because whenever the government is asking for a company to comply, to follow certain rules, they just don't follow them.
Well, let's keep an eye on it. It's an $8.2 billion acquisition.
$8.2 billion. Yeah.
I'm just looking up some notes here. One of the caveats of the deal memo is that Viterra's head office has to stay in Regina for at least 5 years.
Sure. Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. Let's move to the next thing. And
two shareholder meetings. I give it 2 shareholder meetings.
All right.
Yeah.
Still staying in the United States, the FDA has banned red dye number 3.
Yep.
30 years after scientists discover that there was some kind of link to cancer. I don't think it's in cosmetics. why? Tell us what it is.
It's cosmetics, and it was not banned in food, but the FDA has decided to ban it within the food industry, and companies have until 2027 to phase it out, to basically not use it anymore. And for those wondering, what is red dye number 3? It's basically what makes things more red. Yeah, basically. So the cherries you buy in a jar, for example, the candies that are red, so that red dye basically is useful. Baked goods,
Wait, are you telling me my bespoke maraschino cherries that I get from a jar for my cocktails are filled with?
Well, it depends what brand, but there's a lot of red dye in that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the cheaper ones could be made more red with this red. Now,
you can get cancer eating those cherries. Actually, that's probably why you have an arm growing in your forehead.
I've been wondering about that.
The cherries.
Sometimes Canada follows lockstep, or certainly pays attention to what happens in the U.S. What are your thoughts about Canada's position on this? It is still allowed in Canada, right?
Well, yes. Now there are barriers. I mean, you don't because there are thresholds. So if you use red dye in Canada, you're not allowed to use as much. Okay, there were limitations. But my guess, I mean, if you are to sell to the U.S. and they ban the ingredient, well, you can't sell it anymore. So my guess, it's just a matter of time before Health Canada actually makes a similar announcement. And frankly, the science is pretty strong there, and it's about time that they've actually moved on this. I think a lot of Canadians would be happy to see this go.
I've been hearing this rumbling about this red dye number 3 for years from different people interested in various dyes, and of course, everybody's looking for cleaner ingredients.
Do you know what you can do instead of using red dye number 3? What? Beet sauce. Oh, okay. It's very natural. Not as
probably
effective.
A lot more expensive, I bet, right?
But natural. Yeah, that's what companies do.
Strike up the band. Chuck E. Cheese, making a comeback. I don't know if you brought
Chuck E. Cheese.
Remember Chuck E. Cheese? You used to take your kids there, and they had that Autumn Atomic, band that would play every now and then.
I had nightmares about that.
It was quite spooky. Their pizza was pretty good, though. So during COVID, the beginning of COVID,
their pizza, they don't put anything on it.
It was thin pizza for sure, but I found it kind of tasty. And
I call it Chucky No Cheese.
Very funny. They got new partners. They're going to try and resuscitate the brand. Gone are the animatronic band. Hello are trampolines and fitness and pizza. Now, to my mind, now listen. On the one hand, I like the idea that, kids can run around, burn off some energy, not just sit around and watch a bunch of robots like from Westworld play music. On the other hand, I'm not sure how much trampolines and pizza eating amongst kids is going to go. I see some, I see some projectile vomit in their future. What do you make of this?
I honestly, if you get kids to move, that's great. Move and eat, that's great, but not too much.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Well, I mean, I'm a father of 4, so I've had my fair share of afternoons at Chuck E. Cheese for sure. But it's a great model. But if I wish him all the best. It's a tough business to succeed for sure.
Let's talk about Starbucks for a little bit, because they've been in the news for a couple of reasons. One is
a couple of interesting reasons.
Interesting reasons. So one is the lawsuit we talked about last week, the class action suit against overcharging. Now, you actually put a number to that. I saw on social media. I think that's an industry number about your belief. At some point, there is a tipping point between the cost of dairy and the cost of non-dairy plant-based. So you actually, I don't think you put the number to that the first time we talked about it. What's your assessment of what?
Because I think when we recorded last week, it was the day of the announcement, and of course, when something is announced, I want to bring some numbers to the table to better understand the issue and the size of the problem. And so, I mean, this debate is really interesting, because I can hear a lot of people listening to the podcast and say, Sylvain, if you're stupid enough to pay for an expensive coffee, it's up to the chain to decide if it wants to charge extra for non-dairy, and it's up to the customer to decide.
Up to the customer, right? That's right.
And I agree. I mean, I agree absolutely. But there's a couple of things that people need to understand here. Okay, so first of all, the practice has been around since 1997. Just for Starbucks, we're talking $337 million of revenues just by asking.
But since when?
1997.
Now in 97. The plant-based would be pretty expensive, though, right?
It was very expensive, and I'm not saying it was unjustified then, but I would say that in terms of if the cost was the excuse to do this, I don't think that that cost was an issue. Has been an issue since I would say 2017, 2018. Okay. That's when we reached parity. Okay. So
2017, 2018, really?
Yeah, pretty much. But the other thing, I mean, I do wonder about the ethics of asking someone to pay 80 cents because of a health condition, because a lot of people actually drink non-dairy because
lactose intolerant. Yeah,
and there's 16 million Canadians who are lactose intolerant. So I've never understood that practice at all. And finally, and this is the most important part, I think, is that. So I do wonder whether or not the dairy lobby, both in the U.S. and Canada, would have played a role here in pushing these chains to maintain that practice. So you can cut it if you want.
Yeah. Oh, I think the point is good. I'm still not clear on when. I thought the pivot happened much later. In other words, so if I have soy, I'm not lactose intolerant. I just like the taste of soy, and I now use almond. That would be a cheaper or equal alternative when? You're saying 2017?
That's when things change. Well, because it depends what product you look at. Soya was different, rice was different, almond was different. So, but I would say that demand was strong enough starting in 17, 18 for most alternatives to actually allow chains like Starbucks to pay less wholesale. Yeah.
All right. Sticking with Starbucks, so they announced some new rules. You know, Starbucks' idea, the strategy, one of the big strategies behind Starbucks was this third place idea, right? That you'd have home or work, and that this would be a third place. I mean, I've been on the road and gone to a Starbucks.
That you can still consider Starbucks the third place. You just can't go for a piss anymore.
Well, this is the thing. Like, they got into some big trouble when a couple of people just wanted to use the washroom and they were denied, and that caused a big.
I mean, some people are having showers in the sink. I mean, it was getting out of hand.
It was.
But here's a question for Starbucks, though.
Yeah.
So if I go in and I need to buy something to go to a washroom, can I go to the washroom first, or do I need to go to the washroom with the coffee?
Well, I think. I'll buy the coffee.
Or because it takes 20 hours to get your drink at Starbucks now, once you put the order in and
under
you
4
wait,
minutes, they
wait
got
4 minutes, can you actually go to the washroom first before you actually get your drink? What's the policy here?
I'm kind of actually curious if somebody is listening from Starbucks, because if you buy a coffee at like 9:00, can you still stay there till 1? I mean, is there a means test to this? It makes sense. I actually thought they would have rolled this back a long time ago, because someone was killed on a Vancouver patio over a fight for lingering around, and
I know,
it's getting it just got out of hand. And
honestly, when they actually made the announcement, I was surprised it was still a thing at Starbucks. I thought the open door policy ended with COVID.
Right. I thought so as well. But there you go. Starbucks got to do what they got to do to make it a safer place. We saw the results of that in Vancouver, trying to make it a safe place for the paying customer.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with that. That's free.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yep.
All right. Well, this is a bit of a shorter episode. We just want to cover the news. I think of this episode like as a good catch up. We're now caught up on the news. It's fast moving,
pretty much.
And of course, we'll keep rolling out news. News will keep creating itself. Let me tell you. I mean, we've got the 19th coming up. Will TikTok in the US be banned? That's going to have kind of knock-on effect up here in Canada, as we know the Canadian offices have been asked to close. And
soon as food got its TikTok moment, they think of celery, you think of cucumbers. I mean, it's just has a huge impact on food consumption.
Food consumption, food trends.
Yeah.
Companies use it. They
butter
watch
board.
influencers, everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll keep a very close eye on that. And then, of course, come the 20th, I don't know what we're going to know, but we're going to know something. And then stick with us because we're going to talk about it. And we're going to bring you the guests that are going to help explain your world to you from a food and grocery context. So we've got a great rest of our season plan. Once again, thanks again to our friends at Cattle for re-signing up for 2025. Let's leave it there. I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, media entrepreneur, keynote speaker, a bunch of other things. And you are?
And I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Safe travels, everybody.
Take care.